This morning, the Madlanga Commission will continue to hear evidence from witnesses into allegations of interference in police work. The next witness to take the stand will be Lieutenant Colonel Kelebogile Thepa, who's the EMPD spokesperson and head of media and public relations. Ayanda Nyathi is on site this morning, and we take you there to him now to find out what we should expect ahead of those proceedings today. So a very good morning to you, Ayanda. Phase one of the commission continues to take shape, and today we enter into day 31. Tell us more.
Absolutely, Mkolisi. So much has been said about preparations of the G20, and let me tell you, we're coming to you live from the Union Buildings, the seat of the South African executive, and those preparations, if you like, are certainly evident where we're at here. A number of tourist buses keep coming and going since we've been stationed here for the past couple of minutes. You really do get the sense that this pinnacle of the country's capital is preparing to also welcome a number of heads of state in a couple of days' time. Of course, a big part of our focus is on the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. And in fact, from where we're standing, you can see such a great part of the country's capital. And if you look really closely, the Bridget Mabandla Justice College can be pointed out from the number of buildings you can see behind me. Day 31 it is. We spent some days now honing in on the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department through the help of a number of witnesses, the latest being Xolani Ngqiza, the former employee relations head, who's really gone into granular detail about how it seems that there were a number of people within the metro who are pulling the strings for the now notorious, I should say, suspended Deputy Police Chief in Julius Mkhwanazi. He spent a considerable amount of time, that's Xolani Ngqiza, I beg your pardon, speaking about how processes in some instances seem to have been flouted in an attempt to quash an internal disciplinary process against Julius Mkhwanazi, who's since being linked to a number of alleged crimes, including murder, kidnapping, theft, and the list really goes on and on. Today, we're going to stay on the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, but hear from the communications head, who's going to help us get a better understanding of how some of these claims, especially to do with the so-called blue light saga, came to light. Essentially, this idea that alleged criminal kingpin Vusimuzi Cat Matlala had the benefit of Ekurhuleni's blue lights, even sometimes in his private capacity, because he had people who are politically connected pulling the strings for him. Kenny Mapanga is part of our team who's been keeping a very close eye on the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. She now joins us from inside the auditorium where much of that testimony is likely to continue. And Kenny, we're expecting to hear from the Ekurhuleni's head of communications today. Help us place their testimony.
Indeed. Good morning to you, Ayanda, and to the viewers once again as we wrap up this week's leg of the Madlanga Commission's hearing, which has largely been focused on the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department and the alleged rot that plagued that institution under the alleged parallel structure of Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi. We will get another witness on the stand. That is Lieutenant Colonel Thepa, who would have dealt with the communications as that head of communications of the EMPD, or rather, as we know it, as a spokesperson to that particular unit. We know that a lot of what triggered the revelations that some of these members came to know about with respect to Brigadier Mkhwanazi was that initial media query by Jeff Wicks, that is the investigative journalist of News 24, who queried this issue of the Blue Light Saga, which is what was allegedly afforded to the private security firm of alleged cartel member Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. And of course, while the reason or the underlying reason hasn't yet been discovered as to what this possible scheme was about, we do know that the media queries and the subsequent actions that followed the media queries and the attempts to quash the internal procedures is part of what the evidence is going to be about today, because we know that when the information was made known through that media query, that several of those officials tried to intervene. However, they were not successful because it seems that there was this alleged shield towards Brigadier Mkhwanazi, who was, I guess, shielded from any form of accountability in this regard, whether it be the alleged blue light saga or the alleged murder case that his unit was involved in, and other instances or elements of alleged criminality within the EMPD, specifically with this particular unit that he commanded, and then of course his reign as the acting police chief, and the kind of information that would have come out of there didn't result in any, I guess, misconduct hearing at the end for Mkhwanazi. But what happened is we saw a number of casualties along the way, and this is all triggered from that initial media query by Jeff Wex, in which he tried to get an understanding as to how these particular vehicles of a private security firm were registered under the municipality for at least a month and were allegedly fitted with blue lights. Of course, there are other questions surrounding this element of this alleged scheme, what it intended to achieve. We don't have an answer yet as to what was happening with those vehicles in the month that they enjoyed this kind of free reign as vehicles that were operating allegedly with blue lights. However, we will get an understanding of the media query and the subsequent actions that followed it when this particular witness takes a stand. It's over to you, Ayanda.
Kenny Mapanga, thanks very much indeed. And of course, 9:30 is the time when it all begins, and we'll certainly be watching those developments very closely. And there is relevance to us coming to you from the Union buildings, because this, of course, is a presidential inquiry. Ultimately, the report will get back to the man who spends a lot of time in this building, in President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will ultimately have to make a decision about what he will do, given the catalogue of testimony we've heard so far, really pointing to troubling state of affairs, at the very least, probably an understatement, within the upper echelons of the SAPS. As soon as the inquiry begins, of course, we'll bring those visuals live to you here from Pretoria.